think Devin's checking in as well. All right, so we won't go any further until we confirm that. I still haven't been able to figure out YouTube, so I can't. My kid knows it, but I'm just waiting to confirm their sound. Sorry, I always.
No, this is important.
I always want to have my back to you, and I'm looking at my back to you.
It's important for us to wait to make sure the sound's working, because tonight it's going to be important for people to be able to go back and review.
Then we'll follow up.
No, I locked the wheel. I did. Once Jerry started pushing, I made sure. Because if anybody's going to fall, it could be me. The Wi-Fi is not working.
I can check.
I heard we have sound. We have sound?
Did you hear that from whom?
My home.
Oh, okay.
We're good?
Okay, hold on, I have it on my thing right now. Somebody say something. Yeah, we're good.
We're good?
We're
Okay,
We're
all right, thank you. All right, so are there any amendments to the agenda? No? Any public comment? No? Seeing none? There's no new business tonight. Jerry, do you have a manager's report?
Yeah, just a couple things. Talking to Kimberly today, so all the residents will probably get a text notification opting into the push notifications that we talked about this Thursday. So I would be on the lookout for that. And if you don't want to receive the text, all you have to do is reply stop. If you want to receive them, just reply yes or whatever the message gets. But they plan on sending that out this Thursday.
So it'll be operational then for us?
Yeah, there's still a little bit of work to do, but that's part of getting that out there. We're a little late. Another thing, we're a little late getting our quarterly newsletter out, but that's just because we only have 3 people behind the window, and we're short right now. So we're working on it, but we hope to have that out in the next week or so, and that will have more information on how you opt in to get notifications from the company.
May I ask a follow-up question to that on the text?
Yeah.
Jerry, will you have like a communication strategy, even if it's a white paper of who will be sending the data? Let's make sure
Yes.
the messages are crisp, clear, and what type of messages will be going out. Maybe we could review that at our next meeting to kind of close this.
Right. Absolutely, and they'll help us with that. But right now, I think the administrators of those text messages are going to be myself and Kim. And of course, if you folks would like something out there, you just let us know, and we can do that for you. But I agree with you. We should have right in the messages, and we don't want to send too many notifications either. They just, we don't want to be like sending all kinds. They need to be concise, short, and to the point. So, okay.
I think we should have like something written that
Yeah.
says who is allowed to,
Right.
under what circumstances.
Yeah, and we will put that together as soon as we can.
Okay. I'm happy to help if you need.
Okay, perfect.
Um,
Perfect.
And the other thing you were telling us about before we started, you want to mention that? The magazine?
Oh, yeah, I can. So, yeah, I got a call from New Business Magazine, and they want to feature Durham as one of the best managed towns in Maine under 10,000. So they're going to be looking to interview some folks in town, including myself, some folks on the board, and possibly the fire chief. We just got to nail down who we want to be in on those interviews, to talk about Durham, where we've been, where we're going, that sort of thing. Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, I don't think it has a whole lot to do with me. I think it has a lot more to do with everybody, because we all contribute
Was this
to that.
something that they applied for?
No, I just got a call out of the blue. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. So, Yep,
That's all you have?
that's all I got for now. I'll have more for you in the next meeting, because there's a lot going on, but not quite finalized yet.
All right, board member reports. Joe?
Thank you.
Just I want to thank everyone who contributed to put this paperwork together for the law enforcement meeting later. I mean, I think,
Oh, you stole my thunder. I was gonna say thank you
oh,
for doing that.
yeah, I've got a lot of input from people, but I realize the importance of putting in writing our position. We need to do this on other things too, and I want to talk at some point about that, of crossing the finish line on some things by documenting it in a way similar to this, not this fancy, a lot of work, but, no, I'm good.
Heather?
I'm going to not say anything tonight. Are you marking it down in your?
You mean the whole night?
No, just right now in a board member
Oh, okay.
report, right? I'm not gonna say anything tonight.
We have 22 minutes.
Okay,
and,
well,
two
then
minutes-
I will.
2 minutes worth of business.
I feel like you're
to do,
telling me
so.
to say something. So
Well, I don't want, I'm not telling you,
Yeah.
I just don't want you to not say anything when you have something to say.
No, it's all just back to kind of like reiterating what Debbie was saying about closing loops, right? So like the fee schedule, I just wanna keep making sure that those are in the forefront, that we have things that are not completed, and I really don't wanna keep kicking the can down the road, and so the sooner that we can get those things, and I know we have a lot of stuff to work on in full agendas, but the sooner that we can get those things on the agenda, the sooner we can like close that tab as an open window and be done with that stuff. So that's my only comment tonight in my report.
I agree, and I just lost, there was a comment along those same lines on the day. Oh, I was asked about the solid waste committee,
Oh, that was actually what I was gonna follow up on too.
and I know, not last meeting, I think, but the meeting before, we had discussed having a conversation with them and getting things going and make sure they had what they needed. Has that happened?
There's a meeting on September 16th. And I don't know if you all had picked a sort of liaison as the board to that committee, but,
I volunteered,
oh, okay.
so I'll go to that meeting.
You're available? All right.
My plan will be to volunteer to go.
Is that on our?
Is that,
It was on that.
Oh, it is.
it is on,
It is,
that's,
yep.
okay. All right. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I could give you an update on one other thing that I.
Sure.
So the steering committee for the visionary project for the, so that, we had our first meeting on August 12th, and it went pretty well. GP Cog led that. George and I had just finished that schedule of meetings that are coming up. I think we'll have one on October 7th. There's a series of them. If that works with GP Cog, I will inform you of when those meetings are. But that seemed to go pretty well.
Good.
So looking forward to that, yeah.
Can I ask a question about about that?
Sure.
Did they do like bylaws, choose a chairperson, did any of that stuff happen?
No, it's not really that type of,
Okay,
type
that's
of
fine.
committee,
Was
really.
that recorded?
No, we didn't record it either.
Okay. I think that people are gonna be really interested in that, so once it becomes a regular meeting schedule, I think the more that we can work towards, if they can't be live streamed because the staff person has to be there in order to live stream, I completely understand that.
Yep.
If we could record those things so that they're available for residents to view, I think that's important.
Okay, yeah, we can work on that. Yeah,
All right. Anything else? So the consent agenda, the approved minutes from August 27th, and approve and sign the AP warrant from 9/10, and the poll worker appointment. Is there a motion?
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor? 4-0. Right. Upcoming meetings, Solid Waste Committee, meeting 9/16 at 6:30 at the fire station. Our next meeting is the 24th at the fire station. Planning Board is meeting on October 2nd at the fire station at 6:30. And I think we have about 18 minutes before we go into our old business. And so,
Can we talk about maybe the next select board meeting? Okay.
And I just, one thing I just want to put in that RSU 5's having a Board of Directors meeting on September 11th.
Tomorrow night, and that's at 6:30 at the high school?
6:30 at the high school, yep, regular session.
For our meeting 9/24, maybe that would be the time that we spend, not a significant amount of time, but we spend time on understanding the open topics we have that need to cross the finish line and make a plan for what is it we need to say this particular item is done.
Okay.
So, I would volunteer to work with Jerry and whoever to get a list, is it appropriate to get a list out through our email in advance? So the select board can look at that?
As long as we're not having any substantive conversation around it, we're allowed to do administrative tasks outside of a meeting, but we're just not allowed to have any discussion about items that would be on the list
Okay.
So
outside of the
if you
meeting.
sent out a list and just said,
This
is there anything else? Or-
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'll work with Jerry in advance, I've sent the list out, so we kind of on the same page. At least it'd be a good starting point for discussion. And then that next agenda, we should really go through it, make sure we understand each next step, and put a timeline together.
Jerry, can you remind us what's on the 9/24? I feel like we were having, isn't the historic district, is that night? What's happening on the 24th?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I didn't bring my notes
Okay.
with me on that.
Or maybe that was the DOT night?
No, it's actually getting pushed to November because of the meetings that we rescheduled in October, they couldn't make. So now they're looking at actually November 26th, I think, the last meeting in
And
November.
we'll make sure that we already pre-assigned
Yeah.
the 24th, we'll work with
Yeah, and Jerry and I will meet prior to that meeting. I know you met
Yeah.
with Joe Roy before today, so we'll meet and make sure we have it. And
Okay.
if we just need to put it out there and say, this is what this is
These are
it,
the topics.
come up with a plan next week for, next meeting for when we can talk about it, we can do that.
Yeah, okay, good.
Can I ask a point of order question?
So,
So our next thing is listed as a regular agenda item, and it's called Old Business Informational Discussion on Law Enforcement Coverage. Do we have to say something that says we're gonna do workshop format so that other people can speak and that type of thing? Or how do we do that?
Go ahead.
No, if you,
No, I think I think you just keep it the same, and it isn't really a workshop format, really, it's just more of informational sharing, so I think you can sort of just announce that.
Or is the,
we will open it up to public questions.
Right.
so we have to vote to do that, because that's not in our regular part of the meeting?
Right.
Right?
It's not a regular business meeting, but it is part of the regular business meeting.
Right, so when we get there, as a board, we vote to allow public comment to happen at that window of time?
Yeah, when we come back in at 6 o'clock, so in 15 minutes, we'll do that, and then we'll go into that workshop. And so the plan is to try to do an overview. If Chief McGee is here, have him explain why he brought this up in the first place a few months ago. Have the sheriff and deputy sheriff talk about the options that they presented to us. Chief Goodman from Freeport, who's also a Durham resident, I think will be here to speak about Freeport's role in law enforcement here. And so I'll have him do that, and if Chief McGee is here, he can talk about Lisbon and when they respond. And then I think what I'll do is there are some questions, I think general questions that I will ask to get out, and then we'll open up the public and try to keep it questions and not so much commentary.
Got it. Okay, and you'll say that at the beginning,
Yes.
so that people know that's the expectation?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Do we have hard copies of the,
There's
There are
actually
some
some here.
down here. Yep. So with that, I will take a motion to recess until 6 o'clock. Come back for the informational session.
I'll make a motion to recess till 6.
Second.
Second, all those any discussion? All those in favor? All right, we're in recess. Thank you. if I could have a motion from the board opening this part of the meeting up to public comment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you. All right, so I just want to welcome Chief Sampson, Deputy Sheriff, sorry, Chief Deputy, it's been a long day. Sheriff Sampson, Deputy Chief, Representative Gagnon. Coming, answering some questions. First, we were hoping to have a couple other people. Chief Tripp was going to be here. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to make it.
He's on vacation.
He's on vacation. Okay. And Ryan McGee was hoping to make it, but there's been an incident tonight in Lisbon, which kind of will help us address some of the questions and concerns, I think, that people have, and have raised, at least to me. So this came about not because of anything that any town employee or the board had, but it was a conversation that Chief McGee raised at one of our meetings earlier this year, based on his information. He believed that it was time for Durham to start looking for its own law enforcement coverage, sort of like what they have in Poland, because the coverage that we were getting might not be sufficient because of the number of communities and towns that the Sheriff's Department is covering these days without call sharing with the state police. So we had that conversation. I think we've had a couple more conversations since then, and then thought it best to have a public meeting with public comment. So in a few minutes, I'll invite people up who want to come up to talk. I'm going to ask you to keep it to questions and not comments. And so I'm going to start sort of go over sort of an overview of the concerns, and then ask you folks to tell us how you would, what your proposal is, the cost, how it would address those concerns, and then we'll open it up to public comment. Does that sound okay? Sure. Okay. So the concern from Chief McGee was the growing population in Durham and the uptick in crime, be that driving offenses, property crime, crimes against an individual, drug crimes, all of that stuff. And I think right now the appropriate time for me to say, I'm currently working for the Attorney General's office. I'm the drug prosecutor for Antrim County. Right now I do all of the, I'm supposed to do all the felony drug crimes. I'm doing most of the misdemeanor drug crimes as well for the county. Sometime in the next few weeks or months, I'm going to transition to the Deputy District Attorney in Antrim County. I don't know what my caseload will be. It would not be the Sheriff's Department coming to Lisbon. And so I wanted to get that out there in case anybody had any questions about that. So those were Chief McGee's concerns. Chief Tripp raised the issue of the fire department responding to calls, whether it be well-being checks or the like, and there being concerns where they need to wait for a law enforcement backup before they can go in, and they have not necessarily been doing that because of the time it takes law enforcement to get to Durham and ensure their safety at scenes. I think that is a general overview. Do any of the other board members have anything else they'd like to add about that? Go ahead.
I'd just like to say that it wasn't brought to the select board's attention by only those two people. There are residents that have reached out and brought this situation to our attention. And as the select board, it's our job to make sure that we're addressing resident concerns. I want to make it really clear that this informational session is not an indication of where the select board stands on whether or not we believe it's
concerns and heard from the fire chief, who I think, as Josh described, explained the amount of psychiatric calls they may be going to, or medical issues that might involve narcotics, the concerns they were having there, which was similar to what we were seeing with Poland when they expanded their contract to 24-hour coverage. We went over with the select board their options. Right now, we have rural patrol. We have 3 deputies scheduled every shift. You know, that's covering the 7 towns, sorry, that we perform rural patrol with. It's, I believe, as Deb pointed out, it's 400 and something square miles, so it's quite a bit of ground to cover. And they try to get everywhere. I know there's always a concern about why don't we see more. They tend to go where the calls are because they have to be responsive. So when we met with the select board, we went over contracting, the benefits there. You're saving administrative costs. We already have a lot of built-in resources like CID, records management, things like that, as opposed to potentially starting your own PD. So it's a cost saver there. And it would give you dedicated contract employees that would be in your town. We'd have a substation here providing law enforcement services. I think in the packet that was distributed, it's giving a rundown or a brief glimpse of the types of calls we're getting. It's no different than any other community. There's domestic violence, there's OUIs, there's burglaries, car accidents. You know, probably not to the number of some of the more highly populated communities in Chicago County. But as an example, our union recently met with the county commissioners to talk about the calls that are going to countywide. And it is countywide. It's not unique to the Lewiston Auburn area anymore. Communities are growing. We're dealing with the same types of calls. We just might not get, the Sun Journal's changed a little bit, but they're relevant. So we went over with the options, the benefit to contracting, some of the things the select board thought there might be opportunities to do, community engagements, things like that. And we came up with figures on what an average employee would cost for contracted services. So that's why we're here. We would look forward to contract with the town. It provides us an opportunity to actually have dedicated coverage here, to be more responsive, to have better relations with your community, the people that are here, the schools, what businesses for that matter, like your own police department do. The response times would quickly, the response times would be better because you would not only have your direct resources that are going to be contracted to the town, but you'd also have the resources still of the agency with our rural patrol still coming through and assisting the deputies assigned to this town. I think that's pretty much a broad overview. If you want numbers of contracted costs, we've done it on an average 8-year employee, because that's right in the middle of the pay scale with family medical benefits, and everything like that.
So, can you tell us first, do you know what the average response time is to calls in Durham? And so if there were dedicated coverage, that would surely go down. And one of the other questions is, or concerns, if there's dedicated coverage in Durham, are they going to be responding to calls outside of Durham? They would in certain circumstances.
So for the town of Poland, for example, we've had a contract in the town of Poland since 1982. The contract started with just 2 deputies. Now it 4 years ago expanded to 4 deputies. The only time they leave the town of Poland, they'll go back up to Mechanic Falls quite a bit. Mechanic Falls will back them up to their neighboring towns. Other than that is to go to the sheriff's office to turn in paperwork, go to court if they have to go to the hospital for a follow-up or bring somebody into protective custody. But other than that, if there's a call in Turner, they're not going to Turner. If there's a call in Durham, they're not going to Durham. So they're right in, that's maybe Durham's a bad example to use because we want you to have a contract, but they don't go to other towns that we provide protection for. So they are strictly in, the Poland deputy stays in the town of Poland. If you had a deputy in Durham, they would stay in the town of Durham.
And so I know you and I spoke briefly, some calls that they would get called out that would be mass shooting, mass casualty events.
So the October 25th incident, everybody went. Back in June, there was an incident in Auburn.
And then tonight, as an example, with what's happening in Lisbon, all three of the deputies on patrol are there now.
So I currently, this afternoon, a call came in Durham, they were requesting assistance right away. The entire day shift was sent, they're all tied up still. And we ended up calling out our night shift to help cover calls on the road.
And the other advantage to call sharing when you talk about the coverage is when you're contracting with us, you hear about the shortages, state, nationwide, law enforcement. When you have a contract, we have a built-in resource with our county patrols. If somebody quits that's covering your day shift, we'll have the staff, the existing staff fill those shifts. So whether it's somebody quitting, somebody calling out sick, somebody on vacation, we plug somebody in that's on the rural patrol to fill those vacancies. So your shifts are always covered. In some towns, I mean, the contracting thing is common statewide. We're a smaller county with the number of communities, but like York County, I think Penobscot County have, half a dozen to a dozen contracts, but they have more towns. The advantage to having that is when it comes to replacements, once we contract, we cover it until we hire or until the person is healthy again. Some people like that. So you're not funding or supplemental funding the county, and the county's not supplemental funding you, but you have that guarantee of always having somebody on duty in your town if you elect to contract.
All right, and now can you tell us the cost? And I know there were two different estimates you gave us at the select board meeting. If you could just go over those briefly.
So these are these aren't like, detailed numbers, these are kind of rough numbers using the way our contract works. When we hire people, there's certain steps. We can bring people in certain steps. So I tried to give a worst case scenario. If you elected to go with a two deputy proposal, the approximate cost is about $289,000.
And what would the two deputy proposals affect in terms of coverage?
12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The other option is a four deputy proposal, that gives you 24/7 coverage. The rough number is about $556,000.
Okay. And what do those numbers cover? Is that just salary?
That covers salary, all your fringe benefits. It has capital included. You don't have to be in the capital business, so as time goes, if we need new cars, it's part of the contract. The town doesn't have to go and buy a fire truck and try to buy another one. So it's all built in, that all the maintenance, everything is done through us. We own the vehicles
And the equipment.
and the equipment. An average vehicle right now to set up is about $75,000. That's the fully outfitted car, it's the car, all the equipment.
And the big ticket items in a car are the car, the mobile terminal, computer in it, the radio, the watch guard system. All of our deputies wear body cameras. But in dealing with Poland, they wanted out of the capital business, and it wasn't working for us because we were going to budget committee meetings all the time. We found it was easier just to budget the capital in there at what it would cost us to, keep the equipment up to date and current, and then not be bothered with those fixed costs that we agreed to. And since then, we've had SRO contracts with two of the school districts, and we do the same thing with them. So it's always on us to replace a car or equipment in it. We don't go back to you saying, hey, we need a little help.
And my last question before we open it up. The town will be responsible for an office and anything else? Copier, printer, computer?
More in office, most of the paperwork is either done in their car or they do it in the sheriff's office.
And
Just
it's-
because of the way our system, our computer system is, downloading photos and that stuff, it's at the main office, that's where they usually typically do it.
And all of the evidence lockers and things like that are also, and that would be like the reason like the Poland deputy might come in to put evidence in secure locker, because it's got to be tracked, inventory, everything that's important for the court process.
Right. So I'm going to open it up to public comment. If anybody wants to come ask questions, I'm going to ask if we limit it to questions and not necessarily comments at this moment. Come on up to the microphones here. I'm sorry, and provide your name and address, yes.
Check, check.
Yeah, it's on.
Can you hear me?
It doesn't
Okay.
have to, you have to speak up.
Make sure
Okay. So my name is Brad Owen. I live here in Durham, 12 Ada Drive. And I can't believe I've actually lived here for almost over 20 years. We've raised 5 kids in this community. We've seen the school go from a small school to a brand-new school, and seen this community grow and flourish. And we love to be here and to be part of this community. Couple of questions I do have. Can you give me maybe a rough estimate on what the response time would be? The 56 minutes response time is a little concerning for me currently as to, where we're at right now. Do you have an idea on how much quicker that might be?
Well, it would be, the availability would be there unless they're tied up at your neighbor's house or across town at another call. Where right now, you could get somebody responding from Livermore or Green to put things in perspective. So being within your town, from one end of town to the other. So when you look at the average of 56 minutes, that seems excessive to me. I mean, I worked on the road, I guess I could say you don't realize the time when you go into a call, but what would throw it all off is if somebody's reporting a theft, and there's no rush to get to a theft, so that could be why it might be 2 hours to get there, or it's emergency call, maybe it's 25 minutes, bring the average to 56. So I can't tell you how long it takes to get from one end of town to the other. I can tell you at night there's not that much traffic, so that helps out. A lot of your roads are like that, so you have those concerns. But I would think it would be under 10 minutes.
Okay.
Even if they're in town, probably quicker.
So with that question, where would they actually be stationed? Would they be just in their car, or would they have an office here in Durham? Would they have a place that they would hang out?
We would request a substation, and we did talk briefly about that. In Poland, we were fortunate to get an old part of their town building they didn't use. They just finished off an office as a bathroom, and the guys go there to do their paperwork or meet with people. So the town, in our meeting with them, know whether they provide a space in the town office, in the fire department, or somewhere. It would, once it's known, we usually put signage up as well. So that part hasn't been discussed any depth.
Yeah, that's a discussion, I'm sorry, that's more of a discussion I think the select board has to have with the town employees and find the space. I think the hope would be that we could find the space without doing much, if any, work. I think there had been mention of a trailer that might be available behind the fire station. So something, but that's I think the next step for the board and the town
Okay.
employees to sort of map out and present, should this get presented to the town at the town meeting,
Okay.
or a town meeting.
The other comment I just had was, I did have a chance to talk with Chief McGee a few weeks ago. Actually, we were chatting at the Reggae Festival over in Lisbon, and he did mention the COPS grant. And I think that that's a great opportunity, a great idea for us to get some funding. Who would fill that out, and how would that be, like, every year? Would that be renewed, or is that a one-time thing?
It's a one-time grant, usually for 4 years, so we would have to apply for the grant in partnership with the town. We would apply for it, I believe, like, first year, when we did it in the past, it was like 100%, then it went 75, 50, 25, with a guarantee that the town would pick up year 4.
So we did it approximately, I'd say 5-6 years ago, because it was a change in federal administration. And at the time, call sharing was, state police says we're not going to be able to do the call sharing rate anymore. We went to the commissioners, so we funded 2 positions through the Cost Fast grant. So that's expired now, so we're eligible to apply again, but it would have to be in coordination with the town if the town elects to. And then they funded 2 other positions using partial ARPA money, so we could at least add 1 staff, which brought our staffing levels up because we were big police at the time. So we're familiar with the process. It would just have to be in partnership where we would have to do it, and there's some commitment from the town thereafter, like the 5th year, you're going to pay 100%. So you would hope that during the 4 years where the grant the funding is supplemented, that it's offered enough to the town to, 5th year and beyond is worthwhile. But basically, once we fill out the grant, if we're successful in receiving it, the town would be committed to honoring the terms of it, which is the 5th year.
Okay.
But it goes down every year.
Great, thank you.
My name's Neil Berry. I live on Stackpole Road. Could you re-explain the capital funding? I got lost on that.
Basically, we have a capital line in there for payment from the town, and that would cover all capital expenses associated with employing the deputies.
So the 288 includes the capital?
The capital expenses, yeah, it includes all capital. And you're pretty much talking about the vehicle and all the equipment in the vehicle. Those are the big ticket items.
What does non-capital funds mean? Estimated cost, non-capital funds.
It's in your table over here.
What's that?
Which part of the document are you seeing that in? So we know?
Page 2, the first, on the right side of the first table.
That's on, I think that's on the paperwork you handed out when you came to present it.
Oh, and this is from last night's email, so maybe it's different than what you handed out today.
What's the
No, mine
figure?
says it too.
288.
So 288 includes, so there's gonna be the initial capital to get the cars and the equipment that we need.
Which is what?
Well, it depends how many people you wanna do. If you wanna do two, we'd have to look at that. We'd have to look, if we have a vehicle that we can hold over, that's good enough, then we can put that car down here in the fleet. If, we need to order a car, then we'd have to look. The car currently is, like I said, is going around 70,000, give or take.
So my question is, I
So
don't,
there'd be an initial capital expense, and then the 288 includes like a maintenance, so in the two-man contract,
So, no, the 288 is the cost of the contract,
of the total contract.
the total contract. And what it broke down for you in this document is currently under rural patrol, there's no bill to the town of Durham. If you were to contract 2 deputies, they're saying it's gonna be 288 a year, and it's showing you what they cover. And if it was 4 deputies, which would be 24-hour coverage, it would be 556.
I think that's just a mistake in paperwork.
Right, in the header of that column,
It says,
non-capital funds, so that could be.
In the non-capital funds heading is an error.
Okay.
so 288 is the total cost to the town.
yes.
Including the initial capital.
You gotta, the 288 is not the initial capital. 288 is the yearly capital, if there is,
No, hold on. 288 is the yearly contract cost for 2 deputies, 12 hours a day, to include all expenses. There's no 288 plus. It's 288 including the capital. budget.
So it includes the car.
Yeah, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna finance the cars.
So the last select board meeting I watched, which I've tried to watch most of them, you guys seem to want to put something on the ballot this year for a straw poll or something like that. Is that what this is about, to get ready for that?
this is to get information out. I think the intent is Heather is going to try to do a survey of some sort, after tonight's meeting to get initial thoughts. And then, we have, what is it, I think 3 select board meetings between now and the election, where there could be public comment, and maybe additional conversation at one of the select board meetings. And then at the election, I think the hope is to sort of put out a feeler, and I don't know how we would necessarily phrase it, I don't think we've come to that conclusion yet, but it would be trying to gather the town's thoughts of, is it something we should pursue, we're interested in, or not? And so, you know,
So if you thought the town was interested, you'd have something on the warrant for next year?
we would do more work to get to the point where we can put something on, you know, presumably next year. I think it would depend on how much work is necessary and what information. I think the cost fast grant is something that we'd have to make sure that could be applied for. But either next year or the year after, it would be something that we would present if there's interest, or even if there's not interest, it's something that the board decides it wants to present to the town anyway.
Right. So, I just got this last night at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whenever it was emailed. Seems like this is a bit of a rush. I think the whole thing's being rushed, actually. And I did a quick perusal of the categories and the calls that were classified. Seemed like half of them at least weren't, I would call emergencies. So, I don't know. There's more policing now in the county, I believe, than ever, and crime's still going up. So I don't think policing's gonna stop crime. Might solve some problems, but.
Heather Roy, Hollowell Road. So just to follow up on one of Neil's questions about what the select board intent is going into the November election. I feel weird sitting this way because I'm actually talking to all of you, so I'm gonna turn around. I'll take the mic with me, even though I'm probably loud enough. If people remember when we were talking about marijuana ordinances and we put the straw poll out ahead of the warrant, whether or not people were interested in grow facility, you know, those questions that we put out there to gauge interest before we went through the process of developing ordinances around marijuana. The town voted no, that they weren't interested in going down that road to adopt those ordinances. This is what this informational gathering and also the straw poll will potentially look like in November. We're trying to gauge before we put all of the legwork into going down this road, if this is something that the majority of residents actually want us to pursue. And so at the November election, there's obviously gonna be the largest voter turnout in any of our recent elections because it's a presidential election, which gives us the opportunity to poll, hopefully, as many residents as possible so we can really gauge where the interest lies in going forward with this or not. If people remember, I think it was in 2018, the select board in 2018 had you guys come and do this. At that time, they didn't feel like they wanted to pursue it. And now here we are 6 years later, you know, the concern is still there, and so we're just revisiting it again, trying to figure out if this is the direction that the town wants to go in.
Hello, I'm John Hanson. I live on Swamp Road. I'm imagining a scenario if all the towns that are currently on rural coverage all adopted something like this at the same time. There would be a very large increase, obviously, in the police force across the county. And it makes me wonder, is it a possibility that this can be addressed on the county level? Like if there weren't 3 officers on duty on the county level, but there were 6, then maybe there wouldn't be a need for towns to do this, and that cost could kind of be a lower per town cost. And if there's anything like that, that's possible.
Well, to answer it hypothetical, you could always partner with a town to share the cost. But I think in part what we were getting feedback is the idea of having a designated person in your town, establishing the relationships with the townspeople, and you could guarantee better response. So we could increase our rural patrol, and actually designate Durham and Minot have partnered up to share the cost of the deputy. It doesn't necessarily, guarantee that the deputies in Minot, when the calls in Durham, are reverse vice. And I think that's what a lot of the confusion is with rural patrol. A lot of people say, well, you've got rural patrol out there, the 3 deputies, 24 hours a day. What's with the response times, or why is our call getting put off? And it could be because they're dealing with something more crucial someplace else. So in large part, when you're contracted, you're always going to have a deputy here. As far as partnering up with another community to share the costs, that would involve the towns working together. I don't know if geographically that works for the town of Durham. There's other towns where I could think of better examples, but we've got some departments, full-time police departments that you might think are going to be closing in future years, and those conversations come about how does that affect things. Are they going to contract? Will they contract with the town? The call volume is still there, and what tends to happen is when you have a police presence like that, whether it's your own police department or contract deputies, the call volume goes up because there's a lot of things people don't bother calling for that when you have somebody in town you are calling for. And another issue that was really brought to my attention when we met with the selectmen last time is the concern, and the nature of calls your fire service, your rescue is going to. And that was similar to what was going on about in Poland, the psychiatric issues at night, or substance use to an excess at night, and the danger it is for all that are involved, and they're concerned with not only their own safety, but the lives they're going to, in fact, save, and the time it takes for us to get there. So I think that was something that was really emphasized with Poland when they went 24 hours, and in Durham when we met with them the last time. So when you're partnering with other towns, you'd have more coverage, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're in a partnering town. Is that?
Maybe I can ask a similar, a question that's maybe more direct, is there any discussion for Androscoggin to increase the number of officers on duty above 3?
We've already done that since call sharing went away, when the state police said we can't have a call sharing agreement anymore. And at this point, you're dealing with 6 communities that have police departments. So and when you look at 2 of the 6, they're the largest contributor to the county tax bill. They pay, I think, combined 40% of the tax bill. So they know they're responsible to pay for the sheriff's office operations. But as far as we're at, with the budget spikes due to wage adjustments over the past couple of years and things like that, it didn't seem reasonable to request to add staffing to put on the county tax bill, because we already go through a budget committee process where representatives from, Mechanic Falls, Spatus, Lisbon, Lewiston, Auburn, Livermore Falls, they're already contributing towards it, and they have their own police departments. So while the staff is always asking for greater numbers because of the types of calls they're going to, they're more intense. There's more follow-up and paperwork involved. With the cost of the operation already going up due to inflation, we'll say, it just didn't seem like the appropriate time to be requesting more staffing. And understand the politics of going, there with, and it's with we present to the county commissioners, they represent, 7 different districts, and then it goes through a budget committee process, which is made up of all the communities in Androscoggin County, just like the commissioners are. And I think you see everybody, every community, not just in Androscoggin County, but probably nationwide, that's trying to tighten the purse strings. So I don't think we've experienced much success in the Midwest.
Could I summarize your answer by saying, no, there's not any discussions with increasing the number of officers?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other than contracting for services, we've been requested for the town of Durham proposal, and we've been giving information to another community in Androscoggin County
Okay.
about bringing it to consideration.
Okay, and just one more quick item. I was looking in the categories. There's one that's alarm. In the list of police calls, one of the categories is alarm. Do you know what that is? Can you describe what that is?
It could be the alarm here, the vestibule.
Like an alarm system?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you tell me your name?
John Hanson?
I forgot.
You were waiting. Go ahead. I'll just get in line.
Milt Simon. I live on the Stackpole Road. A few questions. I didn't understand the answer between if we contract with 2 versus 4 deputies, because 2 deputies was going to be 12 hours a day was the answer, each shift, and then the answer for 4 deputies was 24-hour-a-day coverage. So what's the difference?
The difference is our contract calls for, our employees get paid for 44-hour work weeks. They work in 14-day pay cycles. With that, they work 12-hour shifts. So if you have 2 deputies, it's 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. But they're not working together. One's working Monday, Tuesday, the other's working Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then it alternates the following week. So you're paying 2 12 hours, but it's 1 in a day for 12 hours a day. And then 24-hour coverage, or 4 deputies would give you 24-hour coverage. And they work, most of the shifts we have are 5 to 5.
Okay, so that needed the clarification, because when you say 12 hours a day, or 12-hour shifts, then you think, well, 12 and 12 is 24. So if we only contracted for 2, we have coverage in town for 12 hours a day. If we contract for 4 deputies, then we have coverage for 24 hours a day.
Correct.
Okay. Is it the intent, if Durham was to enter into a contract, is it the intent of your department that you would go out and hire a new deputy to come and work in the town of Durham, or just move one of your present deputies to our town?
What we would do is offer it to the present pool of employees, saying anybody want to work as a contract deputy for Durham alone, and there might be some interest there. And whatever vacancies aren't filled internally, then we advertise out.
So if you were going to move someone who is currently in your employment pool, well, all of your deputies, I believe, are assigned to a vehicle. So if a deputy who's already working for your department gets assigned to cover Durham for either his 12-hour shift, he's bringing a vehicle with him. So why is your proposal including the cost of leasing, I think is what you said, a new vehicle?
Because we'd still have to replace that vehicle we're taking from the county supply, and in the rotation, eventually that vehicle would need to be replaced, so it would always guarantee a replacement vehicle. That's why it's a built-in cost. So if we send a deputy from the county over with the vehicle that is 50,000 miles, and 2 years later we need to trade it in, you're not going to get another bill. You're going to be paying the same amount. We're going to give that deputy a new vehicle at that time.
Would we be getting the used vehicle, or would we be getting the new vehicle under the contract?
It would depend on, I mean, if you demanded that we had a new vehicle, we could do that. But pretty much we'd have to go and acquire 4 new vehicles to put into our rotation. So there's a chance that could happen, but if it was something the town says, well, no, we want new vehicles out of the gate, then we could always accommodate that. It works out anyway, because we've had people in Poland that have been in Poland, and when they, have transferred to the county, they've taken their vehicle with them, and then we've supplied a new vehicle to Poland. We just recently had a deputy asked to go from the county to Poland. And that doesn't happen as often. So, but the reason why they save the vehicles, there are unit numbers on it, so it's more of just a management thing inside. It's really no reason, but eventually every vehicle gets replaced in the rotation.
So if the town of Durham enters into a contract and you take a deputy out of your pool and assign him to Durham, so he takes his vehicle with him. However, the town of Durham is going to be asked to purchase this deputy, to purchase a vehicle to replace the one that came from the pool. And now let's say 2-3 years down the road, I don't know how long the contract lasts, but Durham decides to opt out of the contract. So now we no longer have a deputy, but we paid for a car. That doesn't sound like good budgetary.
What we were dealing with on the other end, which communities didn't like, is we were having them buy the cars. So we actually lost a position at one time. It was an SRO position, I believe, and they didn't know what to do with the car. So we took all of our equipment out because they couldn't have it, and they had a cruiser with nothing in it that we park on different roads to slow traffic down there. But at this point, we would own the cars. We're taking care of all the maintenance. You're paying us for the capital equipment involved. I guess it's just the preferred method that works for all involved in the existing contracts we have. But so we purchased 4 cars. We equipped the 4 cars, and if at the end the town would decide to not re-up with the contract, they were our cars. Unless, and again, we've done it this way, it just doesn't work as well, because when we're going back to you to buy cars when they need to be replaced. You buy the cars with the understanding all the equipment comes out of it when it was easier to manage, it was easier to budget, because they were budgeting capital to replace cars all the time.
It just seems to me that if we're getting someone from your pool and we're not buying him a gun, I don't think.
You're paying for the equipment. Every year by contract, they have a uniform allowance. It's all worked into the contract.
Okay.
So, for example, Poland, when they used to buy their own cars, if a deputy was forced to work an overtime shift in the county, they made them go find a county car to use and use that county car. Yet, the county deputy, when they were forced to work overtime in the town of Poland, they used their county car. So at the end, that's like our office. So all the patrolmen have the car set up, all of their equipment is in
same time, if a vehicle gets into an accident, needs to be replaced, it's on us, not on the town.
Right, we insure it, we pay, that money for the car takes care of all the maintenance for it and the purchase of everything in there.
Am I assuming correctly that when you were preparing, you prepared a proposal, so to figure out how much it was gonna cost the town of Durham to do this, it was as if Durham had no protection, and now in order to protect the town, it's gonna cost $280,000 a year.
What we assumed is, in meeting with the selectmen, we thought it would be of everybody's interest, not knowing what the residents would think or the community would think. We could give you a proposal for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, or 24 hours a day.
Right.
So what we did is we prepared two budgets based on the worst case scenario for that, meaning, higher pay. You never know, we might get somebody that's got a year experience or no experience that's gonna be a lot cheaper than somebody with 10 years experience. And that was pretty.
Yeah, so I understand that, where I'm going with,
Try to clarify your question, because I didn't like.
I'm going with this, I'm going somewhere with this. Do you want to wait till I finish?
Sure.
Thanks. So, we're already, the town is already paying the county for protection. So if we're going to contract for our own coverage, it seems to me the town would now be issued a credit for the amount we're already paying for your service.
Does this contract mean that there will be no more rural patrol in Durham?
No.
So we're still getting that service, is I think the answer to your question.
You'll still be getting the back office operations, CID services, the rural patrol coming through, everything there. As far as reductions, no. County government is responsible to provide certain services, and that's what I was talking about the budget process. You get communities that have their own police departments, those towns are still contributing for the rural patrol. But as you saw tonight, just in Lisbon, our deputies were there backing up Lisbon PD, and we do that often with the small towns. And lately, we do a lot with the cities of Lewiston and Harvard.
And my last question, can you describe, if you could, what would the typical shift for a deputy assigned to Durham? What would his day be like?
There is a typical day. We run an agency, we work in a profession, there is no day that's the same. So we can come out, our day can start with a fatal crash on 136, we can be tied up for hours. We could have a very slow day, we could cover all kinds of accidents, we could have overdoses.
We could watch soccer games here at the school. There's no typical day. I mean, typically you expect the deputies to go out, learn an area, do property checks depending on, the time of day, get more familiar with it, meet people, develop resources, connect. And then the normal law enforcement functions, enforce speeding, running stop signs, monitor areas, learn it, that kind of thing. Just respond to any calls.
Thank you for your service.
Good evening. My name's Nate Ledger. I live on Brianna Drive. First of all, thank you. You do a thankless job, and it's not respected enough, and you don't get paid enough. So thank you for that. I want to humanize things because we keep talking about equipment and cars, and that's all cool. We can buy all that kind of stuff. What's your current roster, and where are you at in employees? How many how many deputies do you have, and what percentage are you missing?
Can't hear the question.
The question is the staffing breakdown, so the return question I have is, does this include the contract deputies? The contract.
So that's my point. If you are already down, I'll try to speak up, sorry. If you're already down 20%, I don't know what that number is, like what are you already budgeted for, how many deputies, and where are you at? And if we're contracting somebody, that leads into my next kind of question is like, I want to humanize the badge. You guys are like husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, like these are real people that you first have to find to want to do the job that you do, then send them to an 18-week academy, which you only do twice a year. And so if you're already down in deputies, to have this imaginary thing that we're gonna find two guys that are gung-ho to get on board, send them to the academy, which only happens in what, beginning, I think, September and January or whatever? So by the time, if we do hire somebody, first we have to find the people to say yes, and then we have to send them to the academy, and so I wanna know what that looks like.
All right, currently, we have 16 full-time deputies, 4 contract deputies, 2 contracted SROs, and 4 detectives. We have detectives with various expertise. One is sworn in with the Attorney General's Office for Domestic Violence. One is part of the FBI Computer Task Force, I guess, for lack of a better
He's
term.
on 2 or 3 different federal task force.
And he's a resource throughout the state for cell phone stuff. And I'm just being brief here. We have another that does all of our accident reconstruction. We have 2 drone pilots.
So just for patrol, I'm talking about, so like if we get those two
Patrol, we-
two patrol guys.
We have 16, we're down 2 right now. We have 1 at the academy, and we have 1 out as a result of a gunshot wound in Minot. So we're currently down 4.
And so when we find those two, I see a lot of senses that they won't leave town.
Unless called to assist Lisbon or,
Right, so like, if I know, like, I know that, if there's a call, a 2-person call, gun call, domestic violence, something, to tell that deputy that he's not allowed to go when he works for the county, if there's a gun call in Livermore, and you're down officers, and Livermore, granted, we're contracted, are you gonna tell that deputy he's not allowed to back up his brother in Livermore?
typically, what the other part you're missing is we're staffing shifts through overtime.
Okay,
So a lot of vacancies, it's overtime. We're actually contemplating having some of the detectives alternate days to lessen the burden of ordering people fulfilling the overtime shifts. And 2 of the, positions we're just starting to advertise for. But the idea of if there's a situation in Livermore, it really wouldn't be practical to have the Durham or Poland deputies go.
Sure.
When you have Livermore Falls, JPD, Franklin County, Ishkota County, State Police. So unless you're dealing with something that is of great proportions, we wouldn't have.
I don't do hypotheticals, I hate them, because you can spin them as,
And I don't want to say it because you end up in a knock on wood, it's never good to talk about stuff like that.
right,
Today's call in Lisbon, Poland deputy did not respond.
because you
That's what I'm
have
saying.
other police to help out.
The Durham deputy would not respond to a situation like that in Livermore.
And then my final question is, I'm sorry, I have 2. Does that contract include the cost of sending them to the academy? Say we get a new hire that wants to do a Durham contract, is that factored into the cost of sending them to the academy as well?
I might be wrong on this, but we have a training budget on the county side that because of the movement, like we were talking about with capital.
Yep.
It's the same thing with employees, so generally most of those costs are associated on the county side.
Is all already taken care of on the county for pretty much?
Our Poland deputy is currently at the academy, it's being paid for by the training budget in the town.
Okay, and then finally, I'll let other people speak. My main concern is we pay into the RSU 5 system, and part of the RSU 5 system pays Freeport PD for an SR, school resource officer. We rarely see the SRO because of the county separation. Freeport is part of Cumberland County, and so their officer is not deputized to handle calls up here, even though the RSU 5 system pays for a small percentage of his salary. Would the contract lower that? Would we not have to pay for the SRO? I don't know what that, and educate me, please. I don't know if it's so minute that
The only thing I can tell you
it's not
about
worth
that-
discussing, but I know the the school budget pays for the SRO. That never comes to Durham.
The only thing I can tell you about your SRO is we have cooperated with being able to sign the mutual agreement and deputize the individual. If not, it might be an issue with administration there, or, so we have nothing to do with that. That's somewhere else, but we've been open to allowing that to continue. It's been a long-standing practice for Freeport to provide the SRO, and we have done nothing to prohibit that because we welcome the school having that resource.
I just see it as a benefit, not as, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm saying if we have a contracted deputy in town who could also operate as the SRO here, number one, are we paying for 2, are we paying double paying? Are we paying for an SRO, but we're also paying for a deputy to do the SRO work here for the school? And is there a way to?
We have 2 SROs, and it's almost like their own little community. They're very busy.
Oh, I'm not saying that at all,
So,
yeah.
no, so
Yep.
to do community involvement with the students, but would not probably partake in a lot of the typical SRO duties that are coming upon them.
So there's nothing stopping the SRO in Freeport from coming here other than whatever's happening in Freeport or their preference?
Or
And
maybe
so that's a
some
conversation.
of the administration on the school.
So that's a conversation that we should have with the school and figure that out.
I just think it's a manpower thing. There's 6 schools in Freeport that the SRO has to take care of,
We
and
have a
then,
school district in the northern part, the part of Franklin and Androscoggin. We have mutual aid packs with the town of Jay, who provides the school resource officer to high school, middle school, and we deputize that officer because he does go to the Livermore experience.
gotcha, cool.
That's something that I think we will have a conversation about and try to address if that's not happening.
I just don't want to pay for 2 things at the same time. If we have a deputy here,
No, yeah, it would be 2 separate, I think they have to be 2 separate positions,
right,
especially where we're paying for one, and if they're not coming here, then we'll
cool.
figure that out.
Thank you both. Thank you.
I have stuff to say, but I forgot it. I had to wait for it to come back.
No.
No, go ahead. I'm letting it come back to me. I didn't write it down.
Heather, I'm sorry, is it the note that you gave
I
me?
was gonna say something about that, but that's not it. Go ahead.
Do you want, so there was the question about the vehicles, Heather made a comment to me, it's equivalent to leasing, and so the county is leasing each of the cruisers?
Well, they call it a lease purchase, I call it financing them for 3 years, because they last about 3 or 4 years. So when they get paid off, we have a certain budgeted amount, the towns contribute, it allows us to buy 5, sometimes 6 cars, and we just put a car in the rotation, and next up gets traded in. And I can get what you're thinking, well, we're getting new, and that might very well happen, but we finance them, and we have some cars that are 2016 that'll get us another couple of years because of what they're doing, and we have some cars that are 2020 that need to go next year. So there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Some deputies put a lot of miles on their cars, and some do more investigations, and some are doing traffic. So we've been getting sometimes 5 or 6 years out of a patrol car. We can get sometimes more out of, the sheriff said, that we have a couple of 2016 still on the fleet, 2017 still on the fleet. So we do try to maintain our vehicles the best we can to keep them.
And some work a lot of overtime, which would require putting more miles on the cars. So every year we keep track of it and look at what we've got to replace the following year.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Nope, not at all. Derek Lovich, Snow Road. I want to thank you both for being here tonight, and thanks to the town for putting this on and giving us a chance to learn more and ask some questions. Just quickly preface my question by saying that my primary concerns are the epidemic of excessive speed, aggressive driving, and presumed OUIs on Route 136 and being off of Snow Road. We know this firsthand as my wife was nearly killed in an accident last year, walked away with minor injuries, inches away from it being a very serious one. Forgive me if these are then therefore a little too specific for this time as it's early in the process. But given the 12-hour coverage, is that a consistent time, like a set hours of the day? You mentioned a shift is 5 to 5, but is it always every day 5 to 5, or do people like drag racers get used to knowing when there isn't a cop in town?
That would be, we discussed with the town, and what became more obvious in our discussion with the select board is some of the concerns they were having at night due to the rescue, we'll just call it rescue calls for lack of a better term. So if you were to elect to go for 2, we'd work with the town, say, when do you want it? For instance, when we had 2 in Poland, they did certain shifts on, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then different shifts on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that would be, it's fair to have it consistent for the employees and to see what works. Unfortunately, we were meeting with them, there was a lot of interest for different things. There was interest for community engagement and things of that nature, and then there was interest of having the public safety aspect pretty much at night. So if there were 2, we would work with the town saying, what do you prefer? And then we will also work with them to evaluate what are you seeing and do you want to adjust it one way or the other. So although it's 5 to 5, we have some that work 3 to 3, we have some that work 7 to 7. You might say we want 10 to 10, but then you're missing out on school traffic in the morning. So it would depend, what does the town elect to do, if anything? And then if it's 2 or 4, then we'd say, okay, when do you want your 2 hours, when do you want your 12 hours of coverage? Other than a full shift, that would be our only requirement, because we do have a collective bargaining agreement that, you know, gives the employee some security.
Sure. And that makes sense. Thank you for that. I heard your earlier answer, and I totally understand about there's no such thing as a typical day. But is there some way to have some sort of guesstimate percentage of time on average you would expect the deputy to spend enforcing traffic laws as opposed to being in the office? You know, obviously you don't know, every day is going to be different. But is there some sort of time frame that you expect this amount of time is dedicated to it? Can that even be, you know, ballparked or guessed?
Currently, we ask that they have what we call community contacts through traffic enforcement. What we do is we can, because we have a records management system, we can monitor what deputies are doing. And what we're looking for is to get them out in the communities, to be visible, because that tends to, you know, proactive policing would deter certain activities. It would be more like you would supervising anything else, making sure they're out there producing. And it's not producing tickets, it's the visibility, giving people their money's worth, responding to calls. But if we're seeing somebody's not stopping cars or having any activity, but yet they were tied up on a burglary investigation that took them 8 hours, and then the report writing, that's totally understandable. And sometimes that'll happen. So it's not we're looking at saying, geez, why didn't you stop any cars during your shift? Oftentimes we find that you know, there's justification for it. We're lucky where we have staff that understand the value in being visible, you know, being visible and being proactive. So I think we've had, with the criteria we do set, a lot of success with it.
Is that publicly available in any way?
I don't know if the records are. I mean, other than what we've given to you.
I'm not sure. We have one guy that knows the system a whole lot better than we do. I can tell you that for your speeding issue, we've done 20 proactive details just this year. 136 was obviously one of the primary, and speeds are quite high, and they seem to be, most of them, between 5 and 8 in the morning. So they are out here currently trying to do enforcement when the details come up, and when they get down here, 136 is one of the big ones.
And MDOT a lot of times designates the area. We have a supervisor that's putting it for grant. I just signed for another one. Because if he spends all the money in the target areas where 136 was obviously one, he'll give them more money. But what we do is we have to say, is anybody going to do this? Because it's hard for us to give DOT the money back. So he might get 20 grand initially. Once that goes through, he'll poll staff. Is anybody willing to work more? Click it, seatbelt details for speeding enforcement. And if they are, then he puts in for more, and we just receive, I think, 10, 15 grand.
Yeah.
And they're generally 4-hour blocks in target areas.
So, thank you for that answer. I've noticed a difference between when you do see a detail and the next day driving to and from work, because I work in Freeport, so and on Snow Road, we have no choice but to go up and down 136. So, but thank you for your time and answering my questions. Appreciate it.
What was your last name, sir?
Lovage.
Benjamin Redmond, Snow Road as well. I had a couple questions in regards to the data on attachment B. MV laws and vehicle stops. What's the difference between the two?
So an MV law is usually the complaint of, hey, we got speeding vehicles on our street. It is a car coming through that's driving erratically, that we are getting a complaint from a citizen, and if there's a deputy in the area, we're responding to it. Where a motor vehicle stop is the actual, we're conducting an actual motor vehicle stop.
Okay, so if I'm reading this correctly, in 2024, there have been 88 motor vehicle stops here in the town of Durham. And I mean, like, I think if you guys were here for 12-hour shifts, you could do that in a month. You know, the reality for me, I've lived here since 2009, and the very first thing I heard about 136 was called the Durham Raceway. And I watch people, when you go to Little League fields to watch a game, watch people roll right through the center of town and never slow down. You guys have that sign out there right past the Masonic Lodge. Just when I came over here, there was a BMW in front of me, come around the corner where it goes to 35. That thing's flashing. He never slowed down, just kept on going. So, you know, it's a serious concern to me. Somebody in this town is going to get killed One of our kids, one of our family members, one of our loved ones, Derek's wife, right at the end of our road almost. The other question I have relates to the contract and hiring the deputies. It sort of dovetails with what Nate asked. So if we agree to the contract and we go with the 12-hour shift or the 24-hour shift, and you're going to find us 2 deputies, I'm concerned about hiring. My wife is the HR director for the city of Portland. Portland is down 30 officers. Lewiston is down 19 officers. There's a shortage of police everywhere. Nobody wants your job anymore. I remember when I got out of the service, you apply for the state police, there'd be 1,500 applicants for one position. That's not the case anymore. And I respect what you guys do. It's a really dangerous job and it's really tough, and you guys don't get paid enough. So if we agree with the contract, are we gonna be paying without actually having somebody until you find somebody, or are you guys actually gonna stick bodies from other officers that you have to fill those positions until you get somebody in, or are we gonna have to wait?
So we haven't talked about that at all, but I can tell you, we've handled it 2 ways. Once we have a contract, and once it's full, so let's say 2 years from now, we'd end up filling it, from the existing staff, and we can elect to do that now. But we had an instance when we got a new contract for the SRO position, where the person we hired couldn't start for like 3 weeks into the contract. So what we did is we said, it does no good in SRO, because that's a specialty, to have somebody fill it for 3 weeks. We won't charge you for those 3 weeks. Our hope would be if you have your town meeting in April, and we can start the process then, and we can give true figures at that time, which we would save you a little bit of money. Because again, we budgeted for the worst case scenario. And again, it's an knock-on wood thing. We've been successful in recruitment, and we've been selected and we've hired. We're not just looking to fill seats, because that's part of it too. We're looking to bring the right people in. We have had interest in this town because it's a nice town. I don't know how successful we'll be, but if it's 2, that would be easy. We'll start filling it right away. If it's 4, it might involve working with the town to see what works best. But we would have the ability to have existing staff fill in until the right hires were made.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Heather Roy, Hollowell Road. I'm talking to you guys this time. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands the process of how this would work. We touched on that a little bit about what our intention is for November with the straw poll. Our town meeting is held in April. If in November there was a strong desire to pursue this, the timeline could look differently as this progresses. What will have to happen under any circumstances is that, number 1, the town votes that they want to move in this direction. And then number 2, it has to go through the budget process, just like everything else in town has to go through the budget process. And if the town says that they want to do this and it fails at the budget level, we don't move forward with that. It has to pass the budget process at town meeting the same way that everything else does. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that.
Jill Gastonguay, Stackpole Road. I know that you gave a hypothetical answer earlier about what the response time would improve to. What's the current response time in Poland?
I really don't know off the top of my head. I can tell you if the deputy is available, they're immediately responding. So it could be 30 seconds, it could be 15 minutes, depending on what side of the town they're on.
We had the shooting the other night in Poland, and the deputy was at the substation doing paperwork when the call came in, and literally got into a cruiser and crossed the road at the fire department. She was there, so that was like a minute and a half. But there could be another instance where they're at 5 corners at a traffic accident or monitoring traffic by the school, and something comes in on Poland Spring Modeling, which is across town. So obviously Poland has a better response time because it's a contract deputy in town, and therefore controls the system. I don't know the exact times.
Is that something you could possibly get for us for when we're gathering information and further review? Thank you. The other question that I had is when you are looking at attachment B, some of them are repeated, but they have IP.
That means in progress. So when it is an IP at the very end, it means in progress. So there's just like a burglary and domestic. Typically, when I do my monthly reports, I'll just merge the two. In our CAD system, our computer system, when the dispatcher's taking a call, there are built-in call reasons. So some might put it in as domestic, some might put it in as a domestic in progress. But personally, I think there's so many codes that it gets confusing sometimes.
Okay.
But that's what that means.
Okay. So, I own a business in Mechanic Falls, and when my alarm system goes off, the response time of the Mechanic Falls officer is less than 10 minutes. And then we all sit around shooting the shit, waiting for the second person to arrive so that the two people can walk through the house. So it really doesn't improve response time to have a police officer right there in town, and that's for a simple alarm going off in a building. So,
Just could I respond to that? So on alarms, because of the fact that we're gonna have to search a building, and there could be somebody in there, it's typically, a lot of the calls we go to now are two-man calls, or two-officer calls. An officer, like your fire department, may choose to, hey, I know this business, I'm gonna go in and check it out and not wait. But a lot of times, especially if it's a residential house, where we don't know what we're encountering, we will wait for the second officer.
well, and that's kind of my question is, of the 800 calls that we had last year, how many of them would have still required waiting for a second person?
Well, if an officer shows up, say it's your house, the officer shows up within 5 minutes and has to wait for another officer, chances are if somebody's in the house, they've now detained them enough so that when the second officer comes, we can go in and apprehend them.
Or contain them.
Or contain them.
Generally, if people hide. So if somebody's there, they know they're there, we're clearly visible, and, you're watching movement at that point. It's all in how you look at it, I guess.
Okay. If there is a traffic ticket, where does the money go if we have a contract officer?
It goes to the state, but they divide it up through some formula where the courts get some. It's broken out like 3-4 different, we don't get any, and neither does the town, other than probably revenue sharing of some sorts, I guess.
Okay.
But it doesn't, there's no quotas, there's no, officers don't get points or raises or any percentage of the tickets, and neither do the agencies.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Hi. Andrew Matulis, 99 Snow Road. I would just kind of echo some of what you've heard today with just 136 being an incredibly dangerous road where it just seems like it's getting worse and worse. And that leads into my question. Rather than hiring on essentially full-time employees, are there also options available to us to pay far lesser amounts if what people in the town felt they really needed was traffic enforcement in particularized areas or just traffic enforcement in general? Thank you.
In 2018, I believe it was, the conversation, when, there was this consideration, is it time for law enforcement? So we met with the select board at that time, and they said, well, really, we're looking at target things when we notice there's problems. So we discussed with them maybe having a budget amount, I believe we were talking $30,000 a year to have a deputy here for details, because those require 4-hour minimum call-outs. So it give them a pool of money to say, hey, we would like, from 2 to 6 on Fridays and 7 to 3 on, whatever it would be, a deputy available to do this, and they'd have an account to pay us, in effect, the detail rate. And I think the town voted it down with that.
It didn't go to the town of select board, because I think at the time, the conversation revolved around, we could do that, but we would have to buy an outfit car and own the car, and then pay the
been some confusion, because we were meeting originally about a contract deputy, and they were looking at one deputy Monday through Friday. And again, like everybody that was at that meeting, you heard the different concerns, it's 24 hours a day issue, and that's up to the town and the people. I'm just here giving the information. But at that time, when there didn't seem to be the interest to pursue that, well, what could we do? And I said, well, you could hire us to do details, like we do with football games or different events. It's minimum 4-hour blocks, you tell us what you want. We do a lot of 4th of July for like the orchard in Turner where they do the fireworks and stuff. Pretty much you're hiring for security. You'd say, well, we'd like to have additional speed enforcement, additional what rural patrol covers, as well as with the grants we get, has us.
And is it correct that that would cost substantially less than the proposal? Like, let's say, so we have the almost $300,000 proposal, and maybe you don't know, but if you had a targeted response with hiring on, I would presume that that would cost much less than the proposals that are before us today.
Yeah, I think we bill $100 an hour for that.
Yeah, so our speed.
The commissioners set the rate.
Yeah. So if you said, hey, we want to hire a deputy twice a week to do traffic on these roads, then typically our security details or our special details is $100 an hour times 4 hours, minimum 4 hours, and the county gets a portion, it's not all the deputy, and it pays for the benefits and all of that stuff for the deputy, and then we say, okay, and then we would hire somebody and we say, okay, Deputy Jones, we want you to go, they want traffic enforcement on 136, especially here in Durham, Snow Road. Yep, okay, and that's what he or she would do.
And there was one year where I think they were looking at doing it, to have somebody available at the polls. I think we worked out something different, but there was concern over activity that was going on at voting places.
Thank you for your time.
Hi, Mike Chamberlain, David Lewis Road. We keep talking contracts. What do these contracts entail for details, meaning duration? Are we locked into a 3-year deal? Are we locked into a 5-year deal?
We offer, like we do everywhere else, a year-to-year contract.
So it's year to year. And
Now, if the town elects to pursue the COPS Fast Grant with us for the services, that would lock the town into
I think it's a 4-year contract.
a 4-year contract. It's a 4-year commitment, but there's substantial funding by the federal government provided for, it's like 75%, 50, 25, and then you're guaranteed you'll pay the 100% in that final year.
Yeah.
That would be the town's commitment. But as it is right now, we sign a year-to-year contract.
so, year to year, how would that impact the budget committee? I mean, is it something that would have to roll into a budget committee 6 months in advance of the year expiring
So what we do
to
now-
figure out what costs will
What we
be?
do for our other contracts is by February of every year, I give them what the cost will be based upon the deputies that are assigned, and then they take it and do it as part of their town finances.
Okay. As an example, do you have a year-over-year cost increase percentage?
Well, it changes every year. It doesn't, people move around, we have retirements, resignations, other issues. So we base the cost of the contract on what the actual deputy's cost is.
Mhm.
So currently Poland, this coming year, it'll be cheaper because they've got 2 new employees, where we had one retire last year. So he was at the top of the pay scale.
Mhm.
They like it predictable, like anybody would with a budget, and that was why the capital part they liked, and the benefits. And there are some changes every once in a while. There's a new collective bargaining agreement. There's adjustments to the clothing allowance, usually minimal, things like that. But the wages, we actually the commissioners in the last labor contract did it so even the step increases were moderate, as opposed to in the past we had like 3-year bumps that were rather large, so hard to absorb when you have a number of people hitting that. But they're consistent, but I would guess that most years they go up a little bit.
So, to go along the lines with that, is, so if Durham was fortunate enough to get somebody with, say, 10 years' experience, obviously they'd be higher up the pay scale. Obviously, costs go up. So the 288 that you're recommending, that's taken with a grain of salt. That's not something that we can set in stone.
I can't remember, I did not put a entry-level position in there, so I tried to put realistic.
Yeah,
We try to go worst-case scenario when projecting a cost.
yeah,
So that way if it comes in cheaper, everybody's happy.
yeah.
You know,
Well, not everybody. All right, I guess that's all I have for now. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm just sitting back there thinking, so I've got more questions that come up. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lot of budget committee people here, so they are smarter than I am. But I just did a simple breakdown. If you're asking for $288,000 per year to contract 2 deputies, correct? There's 1,800 houses in the town of Durham that pay taxes. If you take $288,000 and break it down by 1,800 houses, you're asking for $159 per household, which works out to be $13 per month. So to my fellow tax-paying people, that's less than what you pay for your Netflix account. So for $13 a month, we're gonna get a deputy in town. If you were to increase that to 4 deputies for $556,000 per year, that's asking the taxpayer to put up $307, which is $25 a month, which is getting close to your Netflix account. I don't know. I could be completely way off and wrong about my math, and I'd love to be educated on that, but that's my
Most just realized how much she was paying for Netflix.
Yes, Netflix is a lot. Disney Plus, Netflix. I mean, I would happily cancel that to get a deputy in town.
I just, because the way, and I appreciate everything you said and everything everybody said. We're not here doing a sales pitch or trying to, talking. It was requested that we come and have this discussion in the past. We did it. It's well worthwhile for our agency if there was a contract, and we believe for this community. But it was brought out, I believe, through community engagement with the select board. The select board asked us to come speak to them on what their options were, and we discussed, options from leaving it at rural patrol to contracting on police department. And we're very happy to provide this service, but I don't want people feeling like we came here tonight to give you a sales pitch because we're wanting this. We do want to provide this.
That wasn't for me at all.
No,
Yeah,
no, I know.
I hope you didn't take it that way. I just see what it's going to cost me as a tax-paying household, $13 a month, unless I'm completely wrong in how you guys budget. It seems pretty easy. What is your detail rate?
$100 an hour.
$100 an hour. So
Some of it goes to the employees, some goes back to county to cover, like, retirement. They figured out a rate to charge.
Yep.
Because the detail rate is higher than the hourly rate for the employee, but then there's costs associated with the employer. And the county's not really making any money because they didn't factor in how much gas we're using in the car and all
Sure.
those, wear and
and you have a 4-hour minimum?
They're 4-hour minimums, yes.
So it would be $400 if we wanted you to come just do a quick traffic thing for 4 hours. And
Well, and a lot of times, if there's really a target area beyond the grants, we try to hit it. It's just calls take us away when I say hit it. We try to show attention to that area.
Yeah.
But the calls that come in daily.
And is there a minimum on how many details we could request throughout the year? Or per
idea
week,
would
or
be, how many we can fill.
how many you could fill? Perfect, thank you.
And so my math, and remember, I went to law school, so I'm not a math major. It was $160 per household.
160 for the year,
Yes.
for the year.
For the two deputy, 12 hours a day.
And because you've asked questions about staffing in a roundabout way, we can order people to fill shifts by contract. Vacant shift in Durham, vacant shift in Cole, vacant shift in the county. We can't order people to do details.
Understood.
So
I see what you're saying.
just,
So details are voluntary, you either sign up for them or you don't.
Voluntary or they're not.
Or they're nothing. Perfect, appreciate it, guys, thank you.
Mark Blake, Stackpole Road. You probably could have heard me from up there. Actually, I think Heather might have touched on this, and this gentleman that was just here might have. But I know you guys have got 2 options that you kind of been offering up here because you've been asked to come. I guess my question is probably for the select board. Has there been any other conversation about if there is any other options? And if there if there is a committee, or has there been a committee put out there to look at that? I know when we've done huge projects in the past, there's usually a steering committee to look at all different options, good, bad, and otherwise, to find that out. I know the comment was about $140 a year for compared to Netflix, which sounds like a pretty good deal, but you add that on top of my $500 tax bill that just went up. And you're looking at 600 or something, and every year that goes up. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. Is there any other options? Have they been looked at?
So, I think as a group, we've only really focused on these two proposals from the Sheriff's Department. I don't think there was much support of a full-blown creating our own police department because of the expense for that.
Rumors are out there, but that's why one of the reasons I'm asking.
No, I don't know that we've had discussion. I can tell you that, you know, for me, for my role in this criminal justice system that the Sheriff's Department is involved in, I think starting a law enforcement department, a police department in Durham would be insane. I think here we're paying for, we're paying the salaries, but we're paying for two just for us, but we're getting the continued benefit of all these other detectives. So the DV detective, you have reconstruction, you have, I have my guys go into one of their detectives for cell phones and those sorts of things. They're some of the best in the state. So we've really, as a board, only looked at these two options. I think if there's an interest in it, we could reach out to one of the neighboring towns and say, what would you charge? I think based on the presentation to us from Chief McGee, this is going to be the more cost-effective option.
That was gonna be another question about reaching out to the other towns.
So
And I'm not saying yes or no either one. I just know this is information for us, but I didn't know if there was, I've been in here for 40-something years. I know that usually big things takes time and they put people out there to do a lot of research. I'm just asking, not as much for me maybe, but for other people to find out.
So this is really informational. There is no time frame. Could this go to town meeting in 2025? Sure. Could it be 2026 or later? Yes. We have not set a time frame for presenting this to the town. This is information. We asked our questions at our meeting. We want to hear the concerns, and I think the biggest concern is cost. And so I think going forward, one of our goals will need to be checking and confirming what I think is going to be true, that this is the most cost-effective option for us.
Right. And it may be the case. I think I was on the board when we had, I'm not sure if it's the same two, but a couple other gentlemen that came and kind of give us that presentation too. And it got shot down. So I was just wanting to make sure that if we go this route, or if the town decides to, that we cover all our bases to make sure. That's all. Because I know that taxes are going up, and if ours are going to go up, theirs are going to go up. So we just, and all we have in town to pay for all this stuff is homeowners. We don't have any infrastructure, so to speak. So we probably should be looking at that, maybe even before this, but that's up to the people.
I can, to address that, I know the woman sitting behind you has made a comment to me about trying to look at infrastructure and doing that. So
Yeah.
it's not lost on us who's
Good.
paying these bills. And that's, it's really, do people want it? We don't want to waste, everyone's time having them come back more, going to town meeting, because if we present this at a town meeting, we're going to ask them to come back to meeting to answer questions. So that it's not lost on us, and I think it's, from what I'm gathering, this is something that there might be interested in. I think it's going to be, it's 50-50 what people want. And so I think next steps for us would be to reach out to Little Lisbon, maybe the other neighboring departments, and see what it would look like to share with them or have them cover Durham. Again, I think their costs are going to be pretty similar. I know Lisbon's having a hiring boom right now. They seem to be hiring somebody new every couple of weeks. And so that's next steps, but right now, I think the focus is on this.
Right.
Because I think, if memory serves, that's how it was sort of presented to us, and based on Ryan's position, I think that's how I took it, as that was his recommendation, and that's a recommendation that I put a lot of weight in.
I'm not against it because, let's face it, there was a shooting in Lewiston just recently. We're only 10 miles away. It's getting closer to home all the time. So,
It happens every
We had a
time.
home invasion last night in Bolton,
yeah.
so.
Okay, I just want to make sure we was covering everything. Thanks.
I think, and so could there be more of a committee or steering committee or something like that? It's possible, we're not there yet, I think.
I just don't want to rush into nothing, even though I know it's probably past due.
Okay, I'm gonna sit sideways this time because I'm gonna ask questions and I'm gonna make comments. Microphone. Could you, one of the things that when you guys came to talk to us at the meeting the first time, that I heard, a lot of what Durham considers, first and foremost, is the cost, because as Mark alluded to, the taxes are paid by primarily all residential taxes. And so in balancing that, a lot of things that stood out to me when you guys came were the non-tangibles. Especially the depth of resources, which also goes back to the difference between starting our own department, which, as Josh said, the collective board thought that was not within our reach whatsoever. But important for us to include in all of the information that's available so people can make informed decisions. However, could you speak about the depth of your resources that you have? That if we started our own department, okay? Yes, thank you.
So by contracting services, you already have administration in place, you already have HR, you have payroll taken care of, you have the records management system, you have your dispatch capabilities, we already have CID services, we already have evidence lockers.
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, CID, it's detectives. Then we have specialties within the detectives. So specialty, we have 4 detectives, like I said earlier. One does a lot with electronics, cell phones, computers. One is an accident reconstructionist. 2 are drone pilots for accident reconstruction or other types of investigation. One is a domestic violence investigator, sworn in through the AG's officer, can literally work statewide. We have a canine officer. We have
They're also involved in the federal task force.
We have federal task force. The thing is, everything that you would need to start a police department, you're saving the cost because we already have it in place. And I think people oftentimes overlook that. And there's a lot of requirements that have come up over the past decade, whether it's involving domestic violence or a number of other crimes that require follow-up. And I remember talking to the director of the academy back in 2011, and the concern at the time was a lot of the small departments aren't going to be able to fund 100% to meet their requirements because it'll only, they'll have 90% free time, 10% hit what they're doing. It'll just be economically not feasible. So he thought at the time that a lot of smaller departments would go by the wayside because of the amount of investment it would take to run it. And you've seen that happen in some of your northern departments. If you're paying attention to the news, a lot of the smaller departments are closing up. Some of the departments around here have ponied up the money to keep their department, but it becomes quite expensive because we're required to do bail follow-ups, domestic violence follow-ups, things of that nature. But we already have all of that built in. So there's a lot that people overlook when it comes to running a police department. The policies, procedures, the insurances, the liabilities. We're going through the accreditation process right now to have a higher standing in that regard. But there's a lot of things that you will be required to do, records management, evidence, and things like that the town is actually saving on. And I don't know if I hit it all, but I think...
Well, one other thing I'd just like to add to that is the office space. Like, we're already outgrowing our existing buildings, and starting a police department would also include the expense of being able to house a police department, where if we were to contract a service, we would need to provide office space. We wouldn't have to pay for an entire building for a police department to exist in. So because of those reasons, I'm trying to answer your question without answering a question, because I'm not supposed to be answering questions right at this moment, but those were the reasons why the select board, as Josh said, felt like that was not an avenue that we felt like we could realistically explore.
And I think what resonates with a lot of people is the administrative cost to anything is always a concern. Well, you're already covering the administrative costs through your county tax bill. It's already there. You're already getting a sheriff, a chief deputy, a major running division, and you're getting a records clerk that's handling all the things to put together for the patrolmen. And that goes for our rural patrol guys, our polling guys, or if Durham would like to contract, that's doing all that process to gather all the information from court. So, there's a lot of services that we're already having that would, be enhanced with this, and you'd have better coverage, because you got dedicated people to your town that would learn the town people. But a lot of the back office stuff that's very costly in running a law enforcement organization is already there provided. So it's actually producing a huge savings, in my mind. That's a huge benefit towards contracting for services.
Okay, this is a question and a comment kind of tied together again. It goes back to what Jill was saying about two people needing to respond to a call. So currently what we've heard from our chief is that he will, or first responders in our town will arrive at a situation that they are not supposed to enter without police assistance. And sometimes, most times, they choose to go in anyway. There is liability, they make that choice and they do that. In that situation, if the chief were there, or I don't know if somebody other than the chief is qualified to count as the second responder, or does it have to be two?
That's their parameters. Ours might be different. So they might have a psychiatric, and I don't know what their protocols are.
Right.
So they might be going to a psychiatric, or a suicidal individual, and it might require two to go in, or, ours don't. There's a lot of two-man calls, and if, depending on the severity of the call or what's going on, the deputy might, want further assistance. But in a way, working with the fire and rescue, we might have different measurables as far as what we're going on.
But you could count as one of
For them,
their
yeah. And we could come in
number
and
twos,
knowing
or
their-
vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you, that was one of it. But I see people trickling out, and I just want to say before other people trickle out that we sincerely appreciate all of you being here tonight, so thank you.
Hi there, Brad Netto, Ruby Lane. Thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate your time. Quick question. The 5 to 5 shift, 6 to 6, whatever it may be, at the end of the day, is that Durham's decision to make? Or, because I do understand if you post the job and one of your officers, I'd love to go work for Durham, and his or her hours are getting flipped back and forth, that can cause problems too. So at the end of the day, who holds the...
What we would do is find out what's your target time for Durham, and because we've done this before with new positions. Here's what we're going to start on 11 to 11, but that might change because we've got to evaluate where the necessities are. You can't predict, you would expect Friday night to be busy, sometimes it's Monday morning. But we would work with the town to give them what they want. So they're like, hey, we want an 8-8, but, after the growth in some development, we would want it to be standardized, so it's not people around all the time.
Yep.
The only thing we really have to set in stone is I would imagine they want more daytime coverage than nighttime coverage if you go for two instead of 4, because the nighttime factor, there's a nighttime stipend. So it's not like we could say, we want a week of days and a week of nights, because our treasurer's office would get.
Right. Would you say you guys are having a hard time filling positions right now?
Again, we just had 2 resignations last week, and we advertised internally, because we have 4 divisions, so the positions are always offered internally first. We post those for 7 days, and then after that period's over, we post it to the public. We haven't had a problem to date. Every time that something comes up, we are smart enough to recognize that this could be our time, but typically we're not tracking the high numbers we had in the past, but last time I think we advertised, I think we had 5 applicants, and 3 that were already academy certified. 1 just graduated from college, and 1 was just looking for a path in life, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing for us, I think, as a community. It's important, you know, the last thing we want is to take this on and then have people, you know, begrudgingly being forced into overtime shifts, taking the town of Durham. I mean, I think for us, if this is something we do, it's something that we want them to become a part of the community and be involved in the community. I also think it would be important to not have, you know, two people take the job that are just off training, you know, that have done their 400 or whatever hours, and all of a sudden are the two deputies we have in Durham. I think having at least one person with experience would be good. But that,
I think we would, you know, based on what we've seen and the people that have applied that are still interested, I think you would find if we were to post the Durham jobs today, which I know we're not even anywhere close, but I could confidently say you get at least 2 experience, because we've got 2 that are wanting to come over from what we're hearing, so.
right.
But times always change, so.
Yep. And I think the last thing, this is something that the council can address, obviously, as we move forward. At the end of the day, you know, everybody looks at money. What's this gonna cost me? I mean, the quick math that he did before, it's different if your house is valued at $200,000 or $1 million. It's very different. So I think at some point, getting a rough idea when numbers and information's put out to say, you know, if your home's valued at this is what it will cost you. At the end of the day, you know, to me, public safety is my number one concern, but everybody is obviously very conscientious of their wallets at this time, so thank you.
I think that's easier said than done, but it's something
Yeah.
we can look into. But yeah, but 160 would be if all the houses were valued the same.
Right. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you. And so, are there anybody else?
Nothing I should say.
We'll hear that too. I mean, it's open, no? Okay. So then I'll address this to you, but make this, it's to everybody. You can find the select board email on the town website. You can email the select board, you can email Jerry with questions. They will, if you ask, you know, preferably nicely, the questions can remain anonymous, and we will answer them either in a return email, or we might, you know,
Send these guys home.
I mean, that's a possibility, but I don't think, it's already past their bedtime, I think, so.
Yeah.
So you're lucky tonight. But, or we might just take time in one of our future meetings to say, here's some questions we got, and we think that they're important questions that need to be answered. So I encourage everybody to have questions, because I know there's more. I had some, I keep having conversations with people because I'm torn going back and forth. But if there's nothing else, I would just ask for a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.